your story started in 2007. Your mother passed away due to symptoms of multiple sclerosis. Do you mind
Yeah.
telling me about your mom and about your relationship and talk about what happened to her?
Sure, sure. So yeah, the story started even before that. As a little girl, I mean, my mom was diagnosed with MS, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with MS, but it can be very progressive and debilitating and very difficult to watch somebody go through. And so she ended up, at one point using a cane, and then, it moved on to a wheelchair, and then she became bedridden. And my father, who's an amazing father, took care of my mom, worked a full-time job, and took care of myself and my sister. And my mom was just somebody that really inspired me as far as living life, because she couldn't due to her illness. And so she always told me, get out there and enjoy life. You never know what's going to happen. And to travel and, to live well. She was in a lot of pain towards the end. And, when she passed away, it was at the point where she couldn't get out of bed and really needed a lot of care. And of course it was very difficult, but, it also relieved her pain.
Sure, yeah. And when your mom passed, your sister had a hard time with it. And I understand that she kind of got in with the wrong crowd and developed a drug habit.
Yep.
Can you talk about your sister and how, I guess she must have obviously had a strong relationship with your mom. Talk about her and her, the way she dealt with that loss and what happened to your sister.
Sure. So Jimmy, like you and I were talking about resiliency a little bit off camera, and for whatever reason, life was a little bit easier for me than it was for my sister. Very sensitive, more of an internal person. Really spent a lot of time with my mom. And when my mom was ill and, dying, my sister really had a hard time, and she couldn't cope in ways that I could. I really, found ways outside of the family with friends and just passions to cope and just, I don't know, something inside of me, I was able to cope with it a little bit different than my sister. And she actually turned to heroin. This was somebody who never even drank, never partied. She was a pretty straight and narrow kid. And I was 25 at the time. So actually during that last year, she only used heroin for, I want to say, a year.
Really?
Yeah. So during that last year when my mom was really ill, my father and I were also dealing with my sister's drug addiction. And she was in and out of rehab, run-ins with police. It was, there's a couple ways when there's a heroin addiction that it's going to go. Either you stop or you don't, and eventually you pass away, right? And so my sister, like me, we're both little, skinny, and it just really, she couldn't handle it. And so my sister passed away 7 months after my mom passed away of an accidental overdose.
Now you're married, and like a lot of women, you wanted to be a mom. Mm-hmm. And I understand that you ended up undergoing fertility treatments. Can you tell me first about, that process? Because I understand that you went so far as to look for a surrogate.
Oh, yeah. So after everything that I went through, it's interesting to kind of look back and see where my headspace was. I was desperate for a family, right? Because I had lost so much of mine. And so I just really wanted a family, and we weren't able to get pregnant, and we were very open about it. And once I started being open about it, then other people kind of coming out of the woodwork, oh yeah, we did fertility treatments, yep. Right? But you're right, for whatever reason, there's this stigma out there. But there shouldn't be. However you want to go about having a family, that's okay.
Yep.
And so, so I went through fertility treatments, and it wasn't working. And we had just got to the point where we had done an IUI. And if that didn't work, we were going to do IVF. And it was, I had done the IUI treatment, and I had found a lump. So while you're doing fertility treatments, they're pumping you up with hormones. And I had found a lump on my breast, and at that point, I didn't even know if I was pregnant or not, because I had just done the IUI treatment. And so I went to the doctor, did a biopsy, found out it was cancer. And still at that point, I didn't know if I was pregnant. And then after the cancer diagnosis, shortly after I found out I wasn't pregnant, thankfully so, I guess you could say. I don't know how to look at that, but yeah, and then we had to completely stop all the treatment because I could no longer ingest any hormones into my body. Now, doctors say maybe that saved me because I was able to find the cancer quicker because it was the type of cancer that I had was fed by hormones, right? So it was progesterone and estrogen receptor positive. So I did end up freezing some eggs. And at that point, I started undergoing treatment for cancer. And then after the treatment, after radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery, we did try a surrogate with the few eggs that I did have. Well, we tried a surrogate a couple different ways. We tried an international surrogate, and we also tried a surrogate here in the US, and none of them worked. And then I was out of frozen embryos.
Now that was in 2013. So how are things now in terms of your health?
Oh, I'm good. I'm totally cancer free. All my, you're continually monitored by your team, and I had a great team of oncologist, surgeon. I also did saw integrative medicine doctors and did a lot of Eastern therapies integrated with Western as well. I really made it my mission and my job to get myself healthy and live. And I took a leave from my work, and I just focused on myself. There was a lot of stress and a lot of loss and a lot of grief, which I think really took a toll on myself and my immune system and my body. And I really had to heal and get myself back into a healthy place. And so that's what I did.
Great. That's good. Mm-hmm. Well, a month after completing your treatment, so a month after completing chemo and radiation, you get news about your dad.
Yeah. So kind of going back to, many years prior when, my dad had found my sister who, passed away in the night. He really couldn't, how does one recover from that, right? And he really had difficulty. And so he actually was, not taking care of himself. I was taking care of him for many years. And that was actually a pretty rough time in my life as well. Just trying to help him manage. And so at that point, he was living with my aunt in Florida while I was taking care of myself through my cancer treatment. I thought I couldn't even share with my father, the only person left in my family, that I was going through this because there was no way he'd be able to manage it. So I did tell him towards the end of my treatment. And then in October, I was totally done with the chemo, the radiation, the surgery, and then my father gets, we knew there was something wrong, and my extended family had taken him to a doctor, and it turned out he had lung cancer that spread to the brain, and they gave him a 3-month prognosis, and they were very accurate with that prognosis.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I then, I got in my car, went down to Florida, picked up my dad, took him, and he was with me, and I was with him holding his hand and caring for him up until he passed.
I believe that anyone experiencing grief in their life needs to find an outlet to help them cope and to help them channel it into positivity. And in my case, when my dad was diagnosed, I created a documentary about the lives of my parents. I didn't mean for that to be an outlet, but that's kind of what it became. And when my sister was diagnosed, I came up with Grappling with Grief. In your case, from what I understand, you dove into health and wellness. There was one website where I saw you described as a wellness junkie. Mm-hmm. I think it was the Yoga Chicago website. Mm-hmm. They described you as a wellness junkie, and you're obviously into yoga and into different types of retreats and stuff like that. What was it that kind of made you choose that as your outlet, health and wellness options like that?
That's a really good question. When you're faced with cancer, like somebody saying, here's the percentage of whether you're going to live or die, right? I just made a decision. So now I'm going to live, right? So I'm going to be one of those that survive. And I just after everything, like I said, after everything that I've been through, I just really felt a toll in my health, my stress, my body, my energy. And I started to just take care of myself in a different way, spiritually, holistically, food, nourishment, mindfulness, meditation, all of that. And I started to see a difference. And so I just really made it like I said, I mean, that was what I did all day long, so that I could come out of it on the other side, and then I also really delved into writing, which is how you found me.
Yes.
The power of story and the power of, of sharing that and putting out into the universe. And that's how you found me, by me putting it out into the universe. So.
Yep. Tell me about a nonprofit called Expanding Lives, because I understand you joined their board in 2018.
Yeah. So, okay. It's so funny. All these things in my life have become so cyclical and so serendipitous. So yes, a teacher that I work with started an organization called Expanding Lives, helping young women in West Africa have access to school. So whether that's helping with barriers that get in the way, working with the families, money, or buying school supplies, or malaria medicine so young women can go to school. So I did a lot of work with that organization. And it's interesting because as we were talking, off camera, now I have recently adopted a little girl from West Africa.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of became serendipitous. So now I have all these connections with some amazing people doing work in Africa, as well as Africans who can help me relate to my little girl and, helping connect it to her culture.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question for you. My next question was going to be about this good news. You just told me about this, I think a few days ago. You mentioned it in an email. And so my next question was going to be, tell me about becoming a mom. Like, how has life changed?
Sure.
And we were joking off the air because we're filming this in October of 2020. COVID-19 still, present. And your daughter comes over from Africa, and we were joking off there that she's probably like, this is what it's like here? Everybody's wearing masks. You can't go to the park, Yeah,
the park's always broken.
Yeah.
Weird. So after, actually it was when my father was still alive. So after I had, I tried surrogacy, that path of having a family, I never really fully left that, right? That was something that I just felt like I wanted to do. And so here, I wasn't able to have children now after the cancer treatment. It wasn't something that would be safe for me to carry a child. So we thought adoption, right? And so actually after my cancer treatment, I had started the process. I don't know if you know anybody that has gone through the adoption process, but talk about resiliency and being able to sustain something.
Yes.
It is a part-time job filling out paperwork, and then again, the money. So my husband and I did fundraisers to raise money, and so that, to help support us in our adoption process, that's another 50 grand. So 40 to 50 grand. And so it took about 5 years until we had her, brought her home. And I will tell you, there were moments of giving up, of like, okay, I can't do this paperwork anymore. And, there's social workers that come to your house, as there should be, to make sure it's a safe environment for your children. And it definitely takes a toll, and you don't know if it's going to happen, there's so many different reasons that it might not happen. And then come March, there's these rumblings of COVID, also where we went to go pick up our little girl. It wasn't safe. And actually at the time, the embassy was recommending we didn't go. I didn't even get to tell you this part, Jimmy. So we were actually in a house, quarantined because of our safety. We weren't allowed to leave home, to the point, this is when we were in Burkina Faso, was the country we adopted from. We had to bring our own camping food, like in a duffel bag, just add water. And that's what we lived out of for the 10 days we were there. We met our daughter, and we were able to bring her home safely. And then the country shut down a week later.
It's crazy. The timing was crazy. It was meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, we got her out. We got her home with us.